Your next promotion is within your control, and this podcast shows you how to get there. Welcome to episode number 116. In today's episode, I am going to show you why titles matter and also titles don't matter. And finding the balance for yourself between the two is what's going to actually lead to your success at that next level of leadership. Listen on.
Welcome to Maximize Your Career with Stacy Mayer, a podcast about achieving your career goals while also being yourself.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Maximize Your Career. I'm your host, Stacy Mayer, and super excited, as always, to be here with you again this week. So today I'm going to be talking to you about titles and why titles both matter and also don't matter, and the type of work that I am coaching you to do on this podcast and giving you these tools to get promoted is both to actually get the title and the compensation that you rightfully deserve, and also to become the powerhouse corporate badass that you also rightfully deserve and already are, quite frankly. So those are the two sides of the coin, what I'm teaching you on this podcast. And today I'm going to be dissecting that and why it's really important for you to understand that we're doing both at the same time, and why that is also important for your success once you get to the other side. So we've had a bunch of huge title changes inside of the leadership table. The leadership table is the advanced program that corporate badasses move into once they've done the work inside of executive ahead of time. They're rocking and rolling with the 15-minute ally meetings. Perhaps they've already landed their promotion. We get a lot of women who join executive ahead of time, do my step-by-step process, and actually get the promotion. And then they join us inside of the leadership table, where I give you more guided path to the executive suite and to the success that you're going to experience on the other side, so that this really becomes a sustainable practice, so that we don't just get the promotion and then we're treading water all along, trying to stay afloat or trying to prove ourselves on the other side, or falling back into our old bad habits of being in the weeds all of the time. Whatever that might be for you, that's the work that we're doing inside of the leadership table. And I just want to applaud them and share with you a couple of the huge wins that we've had inside of this group just in the last month. And I always send out flower bouquets as a big congratulations. And we've sent out several flower bouquets this month. It's been so fun. So one of the women, Stephanie, she was promoted to vice president at a new organization. And this has been a great move for her. She was a vice president before, but obviously this is a promotion in terms of her scope and responsibility and compensation. And so I'm really excited for her and this opportunity. We also had Colleen get promoted to Senior Director of Technology at her organization. Big round of applause for her. She joined the inaugural round of Executive Ahead of Time back in 2020, really has just stepped into this role of a corporate badass and setting herself up for this next level. And then you'll hear me talk on this podcast sometimes and actually in today's episode, we'll be talking about, what to do when you fully set yourself up for the promotion. And then you just kind of have to wait until the title shift happens. And how do you know if that's actually going to happen? So for her, the title shift happened, and now she is officially senior director. She's shared with us inside the group like it really is glorious on the other side, and she's so excited to be included in those management team meetings now and really being brought and valued for her ideas and what she brings to the table. So big round of applause to Colleen. I'm super excited for her. And then also Christy, who was promoted to vice president this week, and I am so freaking excited. She is a double winner of the benefits of the coaching that I'm doing inside of all of my programs. And she was promoted to senior director at a new organization when we first started working together, about 4 months into our work together, I think in at the beginning, January of 2021. And then now she's been promoted to vice president. And this is something that she's always had on her radar and always wanted to have, really not just, as I'll talk about today, for the title, but really to be able to do the work that she wants to be doing and have the conversations that she wants to be having. Sometimes you have to have the title to go along with it. And so the doors and the opportunities that this is going to open up for her over the next few years is just like astronomical. So I'm so excited for her. And for all of these women, I'm really excited for their organizations, because now that these women have stepped into these positions, they're still members of the leadership table. I'm still coaching them in this program. They join us inside of executive ahead of time, always being reminded of the basics, making sure that they're really setting themselves up to be successful in those higher level leadership positions. And everybody inside of the leadership table and executive ahead of time has promotions in many, many, many different ways. So we have these title changes or compensation changes, and those are very obvious and easy to measure. But then there are so many other things that are happening for them in terms of getting clarity on what it is that's going to be next. We have another woman that has just turned down several opportunities for actual promotions, and she said no to them because they weren't aligned with her 3X vision. We have women who are still navigating some of the emotional challenges of the Great Resignation and being thrown so much extra work, not being able to hire fast enough, not being able to do a lot of the stuff that we talk about. Wouldn't it be great if we could all just get paid for our ideas and not be in the weeds all of the time and scrambling because we just had the perfect team? Well, that's not always the case, right? And so that's also why the process that I teach of becoming the executive ahead of time is so important, because it allows us to have that success on the other side. It allows us to learn how to manage our emotions, to learn how to pull ourselves out of the weeds, not always just because of delegation and time management, but really because of how we're thinking and communicating with executive leadership. And when we start with the vision, when we start with the most important things that we need to solve each and every week, then we see all of the other things that we don't need to be doing. And we're able to better manage our time, to be a better leader, to have those more influential conversations, and it brings that happiness into our role. So that's the other things that we're working on inside of executive ahead of time and the leadership table. And like I said, all of the women who were in the leadership table with us, they started out as executives ahead of time. They learned those basic moves. And inside of executive ahead of time, we are really doing the work of breaking down our old patterns, misconceptions, and really that is allowing them to have that success on the other side. So super excited. Big round of applause for anybody and everybody who is actually getting the title. So that's the first piece of today's episode that I want to talk about, is why titles matter. And when I was working in women's leadership, I was coaching for Silicon Valley's premier women's leadership organization. And it was an incredible organization. I loved the work that we were doing. But we didn't often talk about the actual title and contract negotiations in terms of compensation and how to really navigate for our promotions and really speak up and talk about what it is that we really wanted. We worked a lot on imposter syndrome and what it would take to get them there. We worked a lot on speaking up more, really making sure that they valued themselves and inserted themselves into conversations and took bolder risks. And what I was finding was that a lot of these women still, they were doing better at their job and they were having these higher level conversations, but there was this missing piece. There was something that wasn't actually leading to the title change. And what would happen for many of these women, and this happens inside of executive ahead of time all the time. You're joining this program that is meant to set you up for your next promotion and to have success once you get there. And then you get inside this program and you start to say things like title doesn't matter. And I don't really want to think about it that way. Rightfully so. This is our human nature. This is what happens for us as women in particular. So I'm going to talk about why we're adverse to really owning titles. And then I'm also going to talk about why titles matter. So let me start there. Why titles matter. So as I was talking about with Christy's promotion, in order to be included in certain conversations, she has to be a vice president. When you look at boards of directors, especially for public companies, they won't even consider you until you're a C-suite officer or senior vice president. There are a lot of opportunities at your organization that don't exist unless you are a VP, SVP, or C-suite officer. We know what those things are. And then you can ask yourself, well, I don't really care about that, or I do. That is actually what I want. And it is sometimes as simple as getting promoted to that position. You have to get a title change. And then we also know that depending on the organization and the size of the organization and the structure, that a vice president at one company could be the equivalent of a C-suite officer at another company or a director at a different company and all of that. What I really want you and encourage you to start doing, though, is to actually investigate the titles. It's counterproductive to what we care about as women. And what we care about as women is making a bigger impact, is really having a job that supports us and our family, right? Both financially and also mentally and health-wise. So we're not often looking at the title for title's sake. But I would like to encourage you, just as an experiment, to do a little journaling. Actually ask yourself, why does the title matter? Why does it matter for me to be a vice president or a senior vice president or a C-suite executive? Why does that actually matter? And what are the doors and the opportunities that would open up to me? Many of you, like I said, you care more about the impact that you're making. And, we could just shift title and put in insert money here. And we could think about the philanthropic organizations that we could participate in if we had a higher title, if we had more money. And so all of that is available to you and true if you just literally own that titles matter. And I think this is very important because obviously I'm going to stereotype here for a second, but men run around all the time thinking that titles matter. And so we talk about how there are more men in the executive suite, obviously. And I wonder if one of the reasons why that exists is because they look and act like the rest of the room, right? So there's a different set of building trust that these men are doing in order to get promoted into these higher level executive positions. But another reason why we see so many men at the top is because of their drive and their ambition and the fact that titles matter, that they care, and what I would say sometimes too much about the title. But because you are likely caring so little about the title, I would encourage you to care a little bit more. So just lean into this a little bit, do a 10-minute journaling exercise, just ask yourself why title matters. Now, you have to promise me that after you do this exercise, you're not going to come back to your desk and feel sorry for yourself because you don't have that title. You're not going to spend the next 6 months hating your job because you don't have that title, because they don't respect you, because you're not able to do the work that you want to do if you don't have that title. Because now let's go back to executive ahead of time, right? The whole premise of this program is that you can set yourself up for a promotion now. Even if you're a manager, we have individual contributors inside of the group. I don't care if you're a senior manager, you can start making changes to the way that you're showing up at work right now that allow you to have more impact and influence at your organization right now, right? We don't have to wait for the title to really be able to do the work that we want to be doing. So I just want you to play around with that a little bit. Now, I had a beautiful conversation with a woman who used to work at Google, and this was a podcast interview that I did for her on her podcast called Stressed, and I'm excited about it. I don't know if it'll be out by the time this podcast is released, but I'll definitely be sharing that on LinkedIn. If you're not already following me, make sure that you do. And she was telling me that, for the women at Google, they were incredibly ambitious. They believed that titles matter. They wanted that voice at the table. They were having these bold conversations on the regular. So what's the difference? It wasn't like Google had this amazing executive suite with all women. I talked about one of the reasons why men get promoted is because of their ambition, because they do believe that titles matter. And so then if you work in an organization where you're working with a bunch of women who do also believe that titles matter and are incredibly ambitious, why aren't they also getting promoted? So this goes to the other side of the coin, which is titles don't matter at all. And so I talked about executive ahead of time and how I am teaching you how to build relationships, build trust that you are ready to lead at that executive level, no matter what stage you are in terms of titles at your current organization. You can build stronger relationships and start making a bigger impact right now. And I asked her in this interview what the women were doing. And basically the way that she described it, and this is again a generalization, is that right before promotion opportunities were going to be announced, a bunch of meetings got scheduled. So everybody would go out and they would have a conversation with their executive director, or the executive VPs, and they would start advocating for their promotion. And it was just like this big firing squad, right? It's like everybody going for it all at once. And so I talked to her about the 15-minute ally meeting process. And you don't even realize how amazing this process is. And if you decide to join executive ahead of time just to master 15-minute ally meetings, oh my gosh, that is worth the $2,000 investment, like tenfold. And ask anybody who is an executive ahead of time, and they will completely agree with this. So I was explaining to her what the 15-minute ally meeting process was. And if you go back and you listen to the last week's episode about your performance reviews, you know my philosophy of always be advocating year-round, right? We're having professional development conversations and building trust with senior executive leaders year-round. So first of all, this idea that she proposed, which is that we sort of go all for it right before promotion opportunities present themselves, is flawed, right? That's a problem. And so we don't really want to do that. Not one, because the chances of us getting promoted are lower, right? If that's the way we start to advocate for ourselves. But what I care more about is the chance of you being successful at the next level is much lower when you do it that way. So when you only care about title, and you're only advocating for your promotion and you're only doing the work because you care about the title, you're not really wanting to build those relationships with the executive team. The risk that you're running is you might get promoted, but you being successful at that executive level position is a crapshoot. Because if you haven't really built those relationships, then what's going to happen is you're going to feel like you have to prove yourself once you get to that other side. You're going to feel like now you're all of a sudden a VIP and you have to start acting serious. You have to act like a VIP, which for most women means doing it all ourselves, really having very high expectations for ourselves, making sure that we run ourselves ragged. And then what ends up happening is we hate our job, we hate our life, and we quit, right? We're like, oh, title didn't matter. It wasn't as great as I thought it would be. I feel sick. I'm not getting enough sleep. I'm not spending any time with my family. My other priorities are falling off. So then we kind of flip-flop back and forth. And what I want to show you is that when we live in that both approach, that both titles matter and they also don't matter at all, that is the middle way. In Buddhism, they talk about the middle way, the glorious middle way, that place of enlightenment, that place where we get to find contentment. And contentment doesn't mean that we don't strive, that we're not ambitious. But we also understand that we have control. We can carve our own paths. We don't have to be all or nothing. And it's that all or nothing approach that oftentimes really gets us into trouble. And so when women say to me that titles don't matter, what they're really saying is, I'm tired of just going for the title. I'm tired of only caring about the title. And my answer to that is always, great, stop. Stop only caring about the title. Then let's go to the other side, which is the women who get passed over for promotion. And they say to me, I'm tired of only caring about my job. I'm tired of doing a really great job and just getting walked all over. I want the title. And to them, I say, great, let's go for the title. So it's always this balance of when are we going to directly advocate for our promotion and when are we going to start showing up as the executive ahead of time. And 90% of our time is being that executive ahead of time, building those 15-minute ally meetings, having those relationships, talking about the vision instead of just being in the weeds all of the time and going into the details, being very proactive with our ideas and not just reactionary and waiting to be called on. These are all of the things that inside of executive ahead of time, I'm breaking down into a very nuanced level and showing you what all of those things mean along the way so that you can have just tremendous, tremendous success on the other side. Now you're loving life. Now you got promoted, you got the compensation, and you're like, I feel so confident that I can just build out an entire team and I don't have to be in the weeds all the time. I don't have to prove myself once I get to that other side because the CEO has my back, because my executive team has my back, because I have relationships. And if I feel stressed, I can talk to them and I can be building this role. I don't have to just have all the answers myself. That's what we're really, really striving for, is that middle way. And I think we always fall into problems when we're saying titles don't matter or, the other side, which is like, God, I just wish I had the title. Either one of those is this emotional roller coaster. And I really encourage all of you to just hold your hand up and say, I want to stop. I want to get off of the emotional roller coaster. I want to do something different. I want both titles to matter and titles not to matter all at the same time. Now I want to share something with you that I got permission from one of my corporate badasses to be able to share with you, a 3X vision that she wrote out that includes both the title and that the title matters and also that the title doesn't matter, so that you can see this actually on paper. And I encourage you, as you're listening to this episode and afterwards, to really think about your 3X vision and say, does it include both the title? Please include the title. And also, does it include the vision and why I want the title? And this particular leader is very technically savvy, and oftentimes she wants to know the answer. So if an executive leader asks her, where do you see yourself in your career? What are the opportunities that you want next? She wants to answer them very directly. And by directly, I mean this title in this department doing this thing, right? That's her instinct. That's what she wants to say in these conversations. And again, there's a value to saying that. And then you also have to add in why. And the biggest reason why this is so important, if this podcast episode wasn't obvious already, is so that the other person can actually help you. So if you stop at the title and you just say, this is what I want, then that person may or may not have an opportunity for you or be able to point you in the right direction. Or if you only speak about the vision and you don't really talk about what it is that you're actually asking to do, then that person on the other end can't really point you in the right direction, right? They just sort of see it as this kind of open-ended thing that you're still working on and going to figure out. And so that's why we always want to try and come up with a both approach, that middle way again. So I really loved the way she added, and I'll just read a couple of sentences here. While the role itself in a singular company is not meaningful, titles don't matter, the role itself doesn't matter, an executive role opens up the possibility in shaping the industry trends to uncover efficiencies across manufacturing. A female executive in this field also provides influence and sets a new way of doing things within to bring forward women, include them in the drawings rather than as an afterthought. So she's speaking about why she wants to be doing this work, right? How she wants to empower other women. And that is also effective when she gets the title. And there are steps that she can take now, even before she gets the vice president title. So she's looking at it from both sides, really reminding herself, why am I doing this? And then also, yes, a title matters, and really owning the why a title matters. Now, before I head out today, I want to point out the final reason that we say titles don't matter. And that is because we think we are protecting ourselves from not getting it. So we use the language like titles don't matter as a buffer to protect our emotions. Because, like the example of the woman who works at Google, you're surrounded by other ambitious women and it can be exhausting, right? If you're constantly go, 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 very, very competitive. And if competition isn't one of your number one strengths, you're going to give up, right? It's going to feel tiresome and you're not going to want to do it for very long. It works really well in your 20s, but what happens when you turn 40 and you're like, I don't want to live this way anymore? And so what we think we're doing is we're protecting our emotional state by saying titles don't matter. Because if I don't get the title, I don't plan on leaving my company. So what am I stuck with? If I really believe titles matter, what am I stuck with? And here's the answer, my friends. What you are stuck with is yourself. And learning how to work through and manage those emotions so that you're not all drive, go, go, go. All I care about is the title. And then I'm going to do everything that I can possible to get there. And the other side, which is I don't want to put myself out there because it's too vulnerable. It's too scary. What if I fail? And as an executive leader, when you become a C-suite officer or a senior vice president, the stakes are incredibly high. And so I encourage you to do this inner work, this work on managing your emotions now about the title and why that title matters, and also why I am not going to cling to it and make it be the end all be all about every single thing and everything that I wake up about. Because you have to find that middle way. And when you find that middle way, you really have not only more success at the top, but your love in life a lot more. And then you trust yourself so that when you do get the title, that you're going to be able to manage your emotions around it. This is why I have an entire 4-video module section on managing our emotions. And a lot of the work that I do on our weekly coaching calls is around managing their emotions around either not getting the title or going for the title, right? And being vulnerable enough to share that it feels uncomfortable, that I'm not used to doing things this way. And that it's not because I'm just simply not used to doing it. It's not because I'm not capable, or it's not because I shouldn't be doing it this way, but it's because I've spent most of my life not doing it that way, whichever way that is. So I encourage you to start thinking about for yourself, why do both titles matter and also titles don't matter at the same time? And how is that going to affect your week? How are you going to move forward this week from that middle place, from that place of like directly advocating for yourself when needed, and then also putting yourself in positions of influence and opportunities even before you get the title, so that you can start making that impact yesterday and not when grass is greener on the other side, but also I'm very happy to go for grass being greener on the other side. All right, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll see you soon. Bye. Hold up, wait a minute. Before you go, I want to tell you about the changes that I have made to the Executive Ahead of Time coaching program. I recently celebrated my 1-year anniversary of that program. And as a celebration, I decided to open it up for lifetime enrollment for all members. So what does that mean for you? It means that as soon as you join us inside of Executive Ahead of Time, you get immediate access to the 24 core training modules. You will get weekly live group coaching from me, and you'll also be invited to our weekly roundtable discussions where you get to connect with other peers, other powerhouse women, all looking to advance themselves into senior executive leadership positions for life. You are going to get lifetime access to everything that I offer inside of Executive Ahead of Time. So if you've been listening to this podcast and you resonate with everything that I share here, then run, do not walk to join us inside of the program. Go to executiveaheadoftime.com to register yourself today for lifetime enrollment. The earlier you register, the more lifetime coaching you get from me inside of the program. Go to executiveaheadoftime.com, and I cannot wait to see you inside.